Okay. Continuing part 2 of sharing your faith with a Buddhist. All right. So yesterday we read chapter 1 and 2, and today we will be reading chapter 3, the beginning of Buddhism. Okay. The beginning of Buddhism. Hello. As we have seen, Buddhism began with a belief system within Hinduism. The member of the Buddhist community deliberately approached life in a way that was distinctive from the manner in which Hindu approach it, although there were many similarities. Hinduism and Buddhism. The distinctive of this new sectarian group revolve around a few clearly distinguished features, as again, the rationale for and plan of salvation suggests by the Buddha has 4 distinctive elements. 1. The world is full of suffering. This assumption is now very commonplace among Hindus and was perhaps shared by them to some extent in the past. 2. The root cause of all suffering is desire. 3. Suffering can be brought to an end. 4. This end can be achieved through one's own individual effort. And for this, there is a definite path: the elimination of desire and ultimately self. In Buddhism, nirvana, the gods have no role to play. The Buddha was not sure about the real existence or role of the gods in the process. Again, he was rather agnostic and even anti-God. But at the same time, he also was against the Brahmanical ritual and castes. Gautama Buddha criticized the Brahma class on several occasions. He asked who had ever seen Brahma face to face. He asked whether the bank of the river Akrivita in northern India would move and be placed elsewhere by evoking or praying to Brahma. He insists that the talk of the Brahma was ridiculous, mere words, a vain and empty thing. At one time he declared, I do not call a man a Brahma because of his origin or of his mother. He is indeed arrogant, and he is wealthy. But the poor who is free from all attachment, he I call indeed a Brahmana. Note, however, that there is an ideal person or candidate for salvation, even in Gautama Buddha's teaching, that is, one who overcomes all desire. He is not eliminating distinctions between persons, but rather reinterpreting them. going from an emphasis on birth or wealth to spiritual discipline. Gautama Buddha also deliberately, it seems, used colloquial language or dialects rather than Sanskrit, the sanctified language of the gods, in his discourse. Sanskrit was not permitted to be taught to the lower caste, and the Hindu sacred scripture in Sanskrit were taboos for them. Gautama Buddha were reaching out to all, irrespective of their caste. Although in the beginning, more people from the intellectually ordained Hindu community joined the sect. For devoted Buddhists, Gautama Buddha appeals to those who are individualistic in their thinking, beliefs, and practice. Like most other personage about whom we read in both fiction and nonfiction, Independent distinguish the life history of the Buddha, whom teaching resonate greatly with Westerners who insist on individual freedom that takes precedence over the demand of society and community. Buddhism on the march. These features were significantly revolutionary to distinguish Buddhism from Orthodox Hindu, and throughout the centuries, they would be suitably altered for the community to which the monk missionary took the message. In addition, as a simple strategy, the clergy would initiate a process of accommodation with an adjustment to local belief system, incorporating them as part of the new religion at its lower level. For instance, many of the nuisance that we find in the teaching of the present Dalai Lama were taken from Christian thoughts and then interwoven as part of a new type of Buddhism he preached to Westerners. Most Buddhists has no problem with this time-honored process, as their history is full of such alterations and amendments. It is important for us to see how opposing Brahmanical hierarchy and replacing it with a distinction between clergy and laity has not really led to change in the treatment meted out to commoners. Buddhisms, both within and outside of India, had made accommodations with the hierarchy organizations of the communities. In the beginning, members of the Buddhist community were open only to those whom did not have any physical deformity. Removal of caste from the influence or consequences of karma were revolutionary, but it did not eliminate other ills of the worldview or obtained through the Hindu looking glass. Many adjustments in social value brought about by the novel idea of Gautama Buddha was notified through accommodations and adjustments. Buddhist clergies. Monks were initiated preachers and teachers with multilingual skills. The one who was associated with royal families served the aristocrats and lived in the city, while the ordinary monks and lay person who served the mass lived in both cities and rural area, directly involved in the day-to-day lives of those who depended on their rituals. Even now, the clergy cites the 227 monastic rules of discipline as part of their worship, and this recitation is viewed with awe by the lay person, establishing the monks as spiritual superiors. The monastic elites, people like Dalai Lama, now in exile, and scores of meditationists, has come to influence movie stars, politicians, high-profile officers, and famous athletes who in turn influence other Westerners. The stage is now set for the recreations of the international Buddhist community. Thus, the most crucial Buddhist distinctions are first between clergies and laities, and second between intellectuals and philosophers and laypersons. Both divisions seem as acceptable and complementary, so it is possible to view the practice of folk religion in no pejorative sense whatsoever. Even so, monks are believed to have superior spiritual values, and therefore Buddhism nevertheless accepts an inequity of spiritual achievements among human beings and their subsequent ranking on the basis of karmic action in past lives and in the present. Worship. Although the clergy and the laity worship Gautama Buddha together, there are distinctions. For example, the gathering of Sangha, monastic community, is an important local event. Monks convent bi-weekly in conjunction with the lunar cycle to recite the rules of the community. During the rainy season, a ceremony is held that focuses on the confession of commission and omission, and people offer new robes to the monks. Forests and ritual indirectly highlight the importance of the clergies in Buddhist societies. They go door to door every morning to receive voluntary alms from lay people who consider this gift-giving in merits that will help them eventually to be reborn to better conditions. It is also perceived that the monks themselves receive merits by their mendicant actions because they are helping others to accumulate it as well. Meditations and recitation as worships. With the establishment of various schools of faith and practice, the Buddhist discipline, especially meditation, becomes significantly ritual. These include the day-to-day activities of life, such as reciting the 3 vows, see Chapter 2, walking through villages and receiving alms, giving lessons to pupils, sitting, solving puzzles and riddles, debating, reciting the verse, and figuring out the meaning of utterance. Living in a monastic is a discipline in itself. Among the monks, there are orders and they are stricter in the observance of discipline than others. Worships of relics and sites. Worships of the relics of the Buddha and his disciple play a more important role in the lives of ordinary people than most others act of pity. Coupled with pilgrimage, this worship is perhaps the most intense of all ritual experience for the laities. Relics are placed in a casket, which are kept in a stupa, a tall pillar-like structure, or keja, a tumulus mount over a grave. A person visits the monument to burn incense and make offerings. Gradually, the container of the relic were also considered to be sacred, whether they contain anything or not. This time-honored practice began with the adorations of the sacred site associated with the rebirth, awakening, first preaching, and death of the Buddha, and other places, events, and objects associated with his immediate disciple were added in due course. A process continued with the display of the supposedly original body parts and other objects associated with Gautama Buddha and other important pilgrimage. Since this occurred whenever Buddhism was taken, growing mythology ensured there would be sacred place that merit pilgrimage, such as trees, hills, rivers, and waterfall in every Buddhist nation. The Buddhists focus on Gautama Buddha, his individual disciple, and the spirit in and around his royalties of worship. He goes around the stupa or temple or casket several times in prayerful mode. Again, local pre-Buddhist and non-Buddhist belief systems are easily integrated into the worship ritual. For example, in Sri Lanka, some of the Hindu places were included in places as Buddha's worship. In Japan, the Kami nature spirits adored in Shinto, native Japanese religion, were identified with the Buddha and Bodhisattva. In China, Manjuri, a great Bodhisattva with the swords of wisdom, who was reputed to have performed miraculous acts and who could bestow intellectual skills to his devotees, were treated as an inhabitant of mountains that were considered to be sacred even before Buddhism arrived. Popular pilgrimage centers were given new Buddhism meaning with the Chinese contact, and the Bodhisattva were transformed into Chinese Bodhisattva, so to speak. In Burma and Thailand, the footprint of Gautama Buddha were associated with indigenous spirits that were guardians of pilgrimage sites. The trees commonly known in Buddhist sculptures and painting represents the tree under which Gautama Buddha received his awakening. The throne also represents the awakening. The stupa represents his nirvana, and the wheel represents the doctrine of samsara, circle of birth, death, and rebirth. These symbols likewise represent the folk beliefs derived from mythological and local traditions. Okay, page 41. We're going to start with Buddhist calendar next time. Interesting books.